When Russia was hosting the Olympics recently, I asked this question, and now I'm going to ask the same question about the World Cup in just a second. So, when we spoke about the Olympics in Sochi, I told you guys the cost, okay? The cost was $51 billion so that people could fucking do the luge and do other silly winter sports, with all due respect, by the way. All the athletes, they do an incredible job. But the idea that we should spend $51 billion so that people could fucking ice dance, I don't even know if that's still a thing, by the way. I know at one point they did something like that. But, so the cost of going to Mars, just to show you a comparison here, okay? The cost of going to Mars is $2.5 billion. Sochi Olympics, $51 billion. Going to Mars, $2.5 billion. So you see the priorities we're working with here. Well, now with the World Cup in Brazil, we're looking at a similar situation. Because, of course, I mean, it's not as expensive as the Sochi Olympics, but it costs $11 billion to have the World Cup in Brazil. A Pew Research poll looked into this question to see how the people of Brazil felt about this. Quote, 61% of Brazilians oppose having the World Cup there because the $11 billion used to host the tournament detracts from social services like healthcare and education. Well, isn't that fucking genius? All that money that could have gone for and would have gone for some sort of social safety net programs, healthcare, education, etc., now it's being diverted for the World Cup. Only 1/3 of Brazilians support the country's police force as of today. The reason for that is that in modern times they've been doing brutality. There's been a growing brutality trend because they're trying to crack down on crime before the World Cup gets there. And also, the president, Dilma Rousseff, has a disapproval rating of 67%. Last February, get this, they even forced the relocation of 15,000 families in preparation for the tournament. And by the way, in Russia also, going back to the Olympics, they bulldozed apartment buildings in Sochi so that they could set up that area specifically to build different stadiums for different shit that they had to do for the Olympics. Really, in all of Russia, you couldn't find an area of land that didn't require bulldozing fucking apartment buildings. It's amazing how these different governments think and how they act to try to host these events. So here's the question. Again, I asked it for Sochi. I'm asking it for the World Cup now. Doesn't this make the elite stupid? Aren't they just stupid for doing this? Like, isn't it just fucking knuckle-dragging, unintelligent, moronic, idiotic, like, brains are broken, neurons not firing, synapses not working shit? Isn't that what we're dealing with right here? Because to have such incredibly fucked up priorities. And to be clear, I have no problem with the Olympics. They're perfectly lovely. You know, I have no problem with the World Cup, man. They're perfectly lovely. But if you boil it down to brass tacks and you really look at what's going on here, they're using $11 billion that could have gone towards helping people in extreme poverty. All of that money is going towards having cameras point at people kick a ball around a field. In Sochi, the same thing, but with other sports. Okay? And here's the other thing about this that drives me crazy, is that we know as a matter of fact, that let's say they held the World Cup in Brazil still, okay? But instead of sending $11 billion towards setting up the infrastructure for the World Cup, let's say they gave, I don't know, $9 billion towards setting up the infrastructure for the World Cup, and $2 billion they set up for healthcare and for anti-poverty programs and to, I don't know, rebuild some downtrodden communities and to reinvigorate economically the area and to just, you know, invest for domestic policy purposes in Brazil. You know what would happen? Everybody in Brazil would say, we love that the World Cup is coming here. Look at this new investment we just got in our own place. You know, people aren't unreasonable, man. Same thing with Sochi. If you had to, instead of giving all $51 billion to build the infrastructure, to play games like we're toddlers, we might as well played Monopoly and spent billions of dollars. Had teams to play Monopoly or to play the card game War. That's really what we're talking about here. How about instead of giving $51 billion to set up for the Olympics, I don't know, you gave $40 billion to set up for the Olympics and shuffled $11 billion off to reinvest in these downtrodden, extremely poverty-ridden communities, people would love you. They would love you. And here's why I think the answer to my question is yes, they are stupid. I really think that's the answer. The reason why I say that is this proves to me that any nation in the world can pool their resources and invest in themselves, and they can uplift their country and almost overnight become like a second world or first world or modern nation that everybody's pretty much well off. You know, all it requires is will. If you can garner up the will to spend $11 billion for people to kick a ball around a field, you can garner up the will to spend $11 billion to reinvest in the people in your country and set up a universal healthcare system, set up an education system, reinvigorate the economy in all different sectors, the technology sector, the manual labor sector, whatever it happens to be. It doesn't matter. You could have done that in Russia with all the money that went to the Olympics. You could do that in Brazil with all the money that's going to set up for the World Cup. You could do that in America. All the fucking money that we spend on war. We have a warfare economy, 900 military bases around the world, wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, $7 trillion wasted in just Iraq by the year 2053 when you add in all the interest and whatnot. You know, all the money that goes to ExxonMobil for their fucking research and development, $4 billion subsidy every single year. All the money that goes directly to the big banks on Wall Street, $80 billion subsidies for each one of them. Okay, all this money that we're wasting, we're absolutely wasting in corporate welfare, military. If you take that money and you put it and invest it in the people, okay, we could have a flourishing society based on Enlightenment principles from now until as far as the eye can fucking see. But we don't do that. And why don't we do that? Because of the question I just asked you. Are the elite stupid for how they spend our resources? Yes.